in the mathematical and scientific thinking. By the way, when you try to look at philosophy, we see that there are mostly two kinds of natures of knowledge, or two people, or two strains of thinking about nature itself. One is through the way of mathematics, and the other is the way through science or natural science. So people or philosophers who are impressed by mathematics because of its certainty, because of its a priori nature. A priori means something that comes before experience, before thinking, something that you can gain without any prior knowledge of anything else. A thing that can be, whether it's synthetic or analytic, let's not get into that, we'll get into that when we learn Kant. But people who are impressed by mathematical thinking, for them of course everything is coming from reason, which is the ability of mankind, the ability of the human mind to think about things through the mind itself without experience. So things will be a priori. So these people who are impressed by mathematics, they took the rationalist turn. The rationalist turn starts with Descartes, and his again the Cartesian doubt, which is the Cartesian method, which we will talk about in our rationalism class. So three thinkers come for you in the rationalism class, which is Descartes, Leibniz and Spinoza. Again, you see that while these people are thinking of the nature of knowledge, you also have the part where the nature of knowledge leads to the nature of world. So the epistemology and the metaphysics, both you will study for rationalism. Then you have empiricism, which means that for the empiricist, knowledge comes from experience, knowledge comes from observation, knowledge comes from inference from experience. And so these are natural scientists. These are people who believe in the power of natural science to give us a way about thinking of the world, a way about understanding the world. In empiricism, you study Locke, Spinoza, you study Locke, Hume and Berkeley. Locke, Hume and Berkeley, three thinkers. So these are three parts, and finally you see that there is a rift between the rationalists and the empiricists. Between the rationalists and the empiricists, you have the rift that whether knowledge comes from the human mind or the human experience. We have the figure of Kant coming in the 18th century, and he tries to fuse these two, reason and experience. He tries to fuse these two into a synthetic approach, which is the Kantian method of transcendental inquiry. Right? So these four, along with Hegel, who by the way is a successor to Kant, again a German just like Kant, he tries to bring about another transcendental method of absolute idealism. And again, idealism is a technical word which we will consider later, but understand that Hegel comes from Kant, and he is saying that like Kant said that like Kant said that we try to bring reason and experience together, Kant also said that there are two types of reality. Because that is the epistemological value. But what is the metaphysical value for Kant? The metaphysical value for Kant will always be that there are two types of realities, the phenomena and the noumena. And again, inspired from this dichotomy of the phenomena and the noumena, the phenomena being the phenomenon of the world and noumena being the transcendental reality of the world, the metaphysical principle of the world, the reality that you cannot touch or see, that reality, this dichotomy, this difference between the phenomena and the noumena triggers an inquiry for Hegel, and these 5 topics become your history of philosophy topics in the first part of your GS4 of your UPSC optional paper, right? Then, so you have to understand that the paper 1 will have 5 topics which are very, very historical in nature, that they may not have a lot of bearing on how we do things today, but they are where we are coming from. They are the topics from where we learn that what exactly does philosophy entail, what exactly is the philosophical method, and what exactly is the philosophical inquiry all about. Then you have the next 6 topics, which is you have Moore, Russell and Wittgenstein, which are the logical positivists, bringing towards actual logical positivists, which are again Moore, Russell and Wittgenstein coming together, bringing this idea of logical positivism, which we will take up later. Of course, we have to understand that after Hegel, we have another long gap of some 200 years where we are not studying the philosophers in between. So sometimes it will happen that you will feel that what is the connection, how are these things moving like that in history of philosophy. For that, of course, you will have me who will give you a few blocks to build on, to think about how this has progressed, which will not be included in your syllabus but will be included in your classes for understanding. And B, it will also entail a little bit of hard work from your Why Must See, which is a prescribed book, The History of Philosophy by Why Must See. This book is really helpful if you want to see where the whole trajectory of thought is coming from. So you have the logical positivists, you have this linguistic turn, where from thinking about nature of knowledge and nature of the world, the philosophers begin to think about the nature of language. The nature of language becomes the central aspect of philosophy. This is called the linguistic turn, which sprouted from the Vienna Circle, right? So the linguistic turn began to think about, the philosophers began to think about, how does language influence our thinking? Is language the central aspect of our thinking? Can we have a universal language? Is there a scientific language? All these questions began to take a central role in philosophy after the Vienna Conference, which is the linguistic turn in philosophy. So after the logical positivists, you have later Wittgenstein, who takes the arguments of Vienna Circle, turns them over their head and says that there can be no universal language. There can be only a language of use, and he brings the game theory. Of course, you have to let me caution you that now we are just doing an introductory course, an introductory session, but as we deep dive into these thinkers, all these technical terms will begin making more sense to you as we progress through the course. Then you have the existentialists. The story of existentialism, by the way, is an interesting one. Existentialism, even though it existed way before the World War, it got traction only after the Second World War. The story of existentialism is an interesting one because we see that for all the philosophers up until Hegel, God played a central role. If he was not the creator, if the God was not the creator or the sustainer, still God was the need for the concept of God was felt very deeply by these philosophers to fill in the gaps of their thinking. However, with existentialism, there is a denunciation of the existence of God. Denunciation of the existence of God entails that they have said or they have assumed that there is no God. And how can we do a philosophy without God? Here we have the question, why does this happen? This happens because of the age of enlightenment, which is as you see that the printing press becomes popular, people begin to read, they start to question the notions of the Bible. So up until the Middle Ages, before the Renaissance, we have the hegemony of the church and collusion of the church and the state, where the monarchy and the clergy are working hand in hand to keep the feudal system up. Right? But as printing becomes popular, as people start to read the Bible, they see that there are some logical flaws in the Bible. And so they start to question it, which places man firmly in the center of thinking, where rational or reasonable thinking becomes the apex of human inquiry. And so begins the story of existentialism, which is popularly proclaimed in Nietzsche as the death of God, or the statement, God is dead and we have killed him. Of course, this is not a metaphysical statement but a social statement. For Nietzsche, it is the way in which the society he is living in is thinking now. And so, when God, in the absence of God, there is no moral access to human thinking. There is no way in which we can decide what is right and wrong, what is the nature of the world, where the world is coming from, where the world is going. So humanity becomes an abandoned child, a child without a father, and orphan. Because of course you see that in Christianity the figure of God is the figure of the father. So this abandonment, this orphan thrownness of mankind is expressed in the anxiety of existentialism. Now how does this relate to the Second World War? This gained a lot of acceleration, this sort of thinking gained a lot of acceleration after the Second World War, because we see that in the Second World War we had say this idea that if not God, then at least science will save us. That at least science can tell us what is right, what is wrong, what is moral, what is immoral, what is good, what is bad. At least science is there. But when science was misused like that, to build all these concentration camps, to build these atom bombs, to build these weapons, to make communication technology for war, we see that humanity's faith in science also started to shake. So in the absence of any center, in the absence of anything, any epistemology to fall back upon, we have the rise of existentialism, which later led to postmodernism, which you do not have to study. This idea of existentialism in the works of majorly Heidegger and Sartre, we see that technology, God, everything is brought under question, and man or human beings become responsible for building their own philosophies in such a way that helps them to be moral and ethical. So after existentialism, your last topic becomes Quine and Strawson. Quine and Strawson. And in Quine and Strawson, you have topics which are mostly related to the linguistic turn. These will be taken up again in your lectures, which are dedicated to these thinkers. So along with those 5 topics that I have mentioned before, you have these another 6 topics which are Russell, Moore and early Wittgenstein. Then you have the logical positivist thinking, which is the linguistic turn. Then you have later Wittgenstein. Then you have phenomenology, which is Husserl's method of bringing the natural sciences together. Then you have existentialism, and then you have Quine and Strawson. So in total, in paper 1, in your section A, you have 11 topics. In your paper 1 section 2, you have 9 topics which are from Indian philosophy. So you see that up until now I have been focusing on what exactly is Western philosophy, where is Western philosophy coming